Hi guys, my wife talked me into doing this video. So I had issues with this Generac generator when I needed it the most. I started to Google, went on the search engine, and it was very vague information that was out there available. But let me give you a little history about this generator. Well, I got a buddy of mine that actually buy and sell generators, and he and I both work for a company. We've been doing maintenance electrical work for over 20 some odd years. I got like 30 years in the electrical field. So let me start by saying, when I first received this generator, prior to having this generator, I had another Generac that was a 12 kW. So most of my appliances and my furnace and all is gas. So right after Katrina, rather than ripping and running up and down the road, hustling gasoline, I went to Home Depot, and lo and behold, they had that 12 kW. So fast forward, I had the 12 kW generator up until 2021, last year. Decided to upgrade so I can run a lot more things, and got a little apartment that we have, so I was powering up everything. So let me give you the history behind this generator. When I first received it, it was in a crate, corded up and all, but however, somewhere down the line, they borrowed these covers off this exhaust panel. So I didn't have any experience as far as visibly looking at things and notice what was missing and what was not. However, these plates was missing. So when I set the generator up, did my pressure testing, brought it online, started putting in all my codes and utilizing the Wi-Fi. So I ran it open and checked out everything, checked the leaks, make sure my oil level. Fast forward, everything was good. However, I thought it was kind of getting pretty warm in here, this area, but of course, new generator, thinking it's breaking in somewhat. So when I closed the doors on it, just to see how soundproof it was, within 5 minutes of raising the doors back up, I noticed this here controller has started melting down. As you can see it, how it's kind of deformed. So I really didn't think nothing of it at first, but when I closed the doors again, open it back up, it melted down to this level. And I'm like, something not right. Excessive heat. Shut it down, start Googling, looking at the properties and the physical aspects of this generator, and that's when I noticed the cover's missing. Notify the distributor. You know, they wanted me to get a service rep out, let him file. However, I just went ahead and bought the covers, put it on there. So even though this was deformed and kind of out of shape, it ran fine. Tested. I done my weekly test. Let it run for 5 minutes, once a week. And you can test it in ever how long and how many times you want to, but that worked out good. However, the last storm we had come through, man, I thought I was set. Generator came online, ran for about 2.5 hours. Looking at it online, my wife called me around the same time. I noticed it went offline. She said the generator shut down. Of course, it was 11:30 at night, pitch dark. And so I left work, came home, serviced, kind of looked at it. Didn't have much time. Reset everything, crunk it back up. It ran for long enough for me to get back to work. Fast forward, shut back down. However, so I'm thinking, you know, this property, it looked like it's been damaged, so I'm thinking it was the controller, maybe. So what I did, I went ahead and called a service rep. You know, mind you, it's right after a major storm came through, so they put me on a waiting list. I finally got them to come out. After maybe about 2 weeks, they looked at this controller and said, okay, yep, controller bad, we'll order you one. So let me back up a little bit. Prior to that, you know, we needed a generator because in the South, it gets very hot. So what I done, I'm thinking maybe, and I talked with my buddy that does generator. He said, man, look, you know, your best bet, maybe just change that controller out. That looked like the obvious. So I did. I went ahead and ordered one. I can't remember the website, but it was relatively inexpensive. So I ordered this, put the new one in, same thing. And the faults I was getting was sporadic. It was jumping up and down like it wouldn't regulate the hertz, and it take it out on different faults, low speed, over speed. So I said, okay, well, that's not it. So I played around with it. My buddy telling me, man, maybe your gas pressure is not right. So we put a regulator on it, and it's supposed to stay around 5 to 7 inches of water. As far as pressure, all that was dead on. So then I got to looking around. It got what they call, I forget what this little part. It's sort of like a governor in there. It's called an air mixer or something. But all it does is just regulate and tell the generator what speed to run at, and it keeps it depending on the demand and how much load you pulling. It's sort of like a governor, but it's electronic mixing assembly. I think that's what it's called. So I changed, with all the errors that I was getting, man, I was kind of frustrated. My wife was kind of on me hard because I had a 12 kW generator that was working fine, and spent about $5,000 on this new one, and we was without service for about a week or so. So she was on me hard and heavy. We sweating it out. Fortunately enough, I was able to get a portable generator and make do. But fast forward, I ended up buying this mixing assembly, and for the most part on these new generators, that's basically the heart and the brains of this generator, this controller and that mixing assembly. But apparently what happened, that excessive heat some kind of way melted the electronics part, and it's a governor, all it is, but it's electronically governed. They call it a mixing assembly. And nowhere on the internet could I find any information that would say, hey, this is your problem. They send you all around. I even borrowed one of these generator books from my buddy. It tell you all these test points, check the regulator, check this and that and another. But I will say this, on these new type generators, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be your controller. If it will run and crank and all, and you can't get your speed to regulate and it's jumping up and down and all, sometimes that mixing assembly would get kind of stuck. But I freed it up, made sure everything was freed up on the old one. This is it here. It's got this wire, and sometimes it's like a 4-pin connector that'll come loose, and the book tell you to check it, to unplug it and reseat it. I did all that. None of it would work. But however, some kind of way, that little motor in there, like a governor, it had got overheat by not having this here exhaust plates in place. But man, that racked my brain. I ended up getting it, man, and everything settled down. It ran like a charm, and I'm like, man, thank you, Jesus. So maybe that would help someone down the road. So I kept this old one since I had bought a new one. This worked just like new, but of course, it being kind of disfaced, since I did have 2, I just went ahead and put the new one in. So kept this one for a test model. So if one of my buddies have issues, we'll swap it out just to see. But if you're having issues with not regulating, especially on the newer ones, there's only 2 parts that can go bad on them, is that controller or that mixing assembly. Once you check your gaps and make sure you spark plug all the normal things you do, make sure you got a good oil level and that pressure, that switch is working good, showing that you got oil and pressure. Normally on a brand new one, you're not gonna have issues with that. But mine, from Jump Street, I mean, it tested good every week, but it was only running 5 minutes each week. But when the rubber met the road and I needed it, that's when I had the latent failure on it, and that's what happened there. Even though this one is deformed, it's good as new. So more than likely, apparently these controllers can take more, they're more doable than that mixing assembly. So if it ever goes through some type of heat, extreme heat like this went through in that short period of time, and you're having the symptoms that I was having, It would run, I would get it to run, it spit and spatter, and then I would try to work this little governor manually, and it'll show under speed or over speed because it's got to run around 60 hertz. And then, if I try to pep it up and make it run above that, it'll kick out on over speed. And then, of course, it's going to tell you to look at your sensors around your ammeter and all that, but that's getting into another chapter. But if you're having like issues with it's not governing and it's trying to find the sweet spot, of course, make sure that governor or that little mixer assembly governor is not sticking. And once you do that, free it up. Check your little connector. It's actually a 2-pin connector. Sometimes it's actually this one here that they'll say will vibrate loose. But I checked all them connections and plugged them back in, reseated them, put the new one in. It did the same thing this old one was doing. And I got the Evolution 2.0, so it's the newer type. But really, there's really not a whole lot to this generator. There's not really much that can go wrong. Keep your good fresh battery on there, because most of the time that's what happens. The person don't hear it exercising. And what I did, they got what they call a quiet mode. They usually, when generators is in subdivisions and all, they run in the economy a quiet mode. I disable that and I let it run full speed, which would make a little bit more noise, but you're getting it up and letting it run where it should run under normal circumstances. But usually in test mode from the factory, it's in quiet, so it's running at about half speed, just kind of putting along. I didn't like that because running in the half speed mode is different from running it wide open when you really need it. So my test mode now is just a regular, 60 hertz, running at full speed. That way I can listen to it, know it's sounding right. And of course, they got the app on your phone. You can check it, give you your battery voltage, let you know it tests good. And mine was showing all fine and dandy. So I would advise anyone at least once a year, turn your power off and get on your generator for about an hour or two. Because the last thing you want is to need it and not have it. So don't just listen to the test mode and let it go through that cycle. You can do that, 11 months out of the year, but that 12th month, once a year, put it on the low, let it run. It may cost you a little bit in propane or natural gas, depending on which you're running on, but you will know that it will run when it's needed. Because, we may go 2-3 years without a power failure. But here's what I will say. All it takes is one time for it to pay for itself, because you're the only one in your area that's got power. Everybody else, hustling gas for 3 and 4 weeks, and everything in your house is running. It pay for itself. So I have yet to prove this one out, other than the fact that I ran it for about 5 hours on full load, air conditions, and I hooked up the switches to where they drop out. If the all 3 compressors try to come on at one time, they'll drop out and cycle in every, I think it's 160 seconds, they'll come back online. And most air conditioners nowadays have a delay start, so you don't try to pull in all that lock rotor amps at one time. But there you have it, folks. If you have any issues with generator, just hit me up. I done worked on my own generators, my mom, my sisters. But this one here threw me for a loop because, it had never went through the test mode. But however, that was the root cause, shipping this thing without the guards for the exhaust, and excessive heat getting in there and messing up the electronics on that mixing assembly. So now, it's good as new, runs good. Am I waiting on the next storm to come through to really run it for 3 and 4 hours? 3 or 4 days? No. Because you cannot produce electricity cheap as you can buy it. Right now, natural gas pretty relatively inexpensive, but it still costs more. So, but this is a standby generator, waiting on the next event to happen. So y'all be safe. A lot of things don't try at home. I did install this generator myself, put in my disconnect and ran automatic transfer switch, but I wouldn't advise no one to get into that unless you have a strong electrical background. But you can come in